So, it's been a while since I've done a top five list. So, for today, I thought I'd do the top five scariest villains. Now, keep in mind, this is my personal opinion. So, if your favorite villain does not appear on this list, do not panic. I'm sure they are good, but these are just the ones that I personally found the scariest. And now, clocking in at number five, we have Mr. Chuckleteeth from the X-Files episode Familiar. I do understand that a lot of people like Tooms compared to Mr. Chuckleteeth, but I feel like between the two, Chuckleteeth is a lot scarier because he seems to attack on a more psychological and emotional level. Now, I should probably point out that this is a very corrupt demon that has been summoned to get revenge on somebody, but because of this, the demon is now doing whatever it wants and is now attacking people very close to the woman. And basically, the demon takes on the form of someone that you like in order to gain your trust. That's why at the beginning, don't worry, this is not a spoiler, this is literally only within the first 5 minutes. At the beginning, you see that demon take on the form of Mr. Chuckleteeth before he catches Anne. He's also very scary because of the collateral damage he causes. What I mean by that is he literally caused an innocent man. Okay, he wasn't really too innocent because he was a registered sex offender. But regardless of his record, it's still very scary because he had nothing to do with the murders, and yet people were just so quick to assume that he was the one who did it. It doesn't help with that he used to entertain children, and they find the Mr. Chuckleteeth mask. And what was the the demon pretending to be when they got that kid? Mr. Chuckleteeth. So basically, because of all that stuff going against him, a man who literally had nothing to do with these murders was brutally beaten almost half to death. And the demon will fucking torment you. Like, it will literally, at one point, it turned into one of the dead children of the parents, and it literally just caused them to veer off the road and crash their car into the ditch. And there's another scene where the demon is stalking one of the officers through the house, pretending to be their dead son, talking their voice and shit. But we're just getting started on the list of the scariest villains. Let's see what checks in at number 4. Number 4 on my list is Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Now we've gotten to someone who can attack you at your most vulnerable. This is a villain that just seems straight up unstoppable because he just has so much of an advantage over you, and he can just literally do anything he wants. He's also extremely sadistic. Like, he'll just literally mock and laugh at his victims and chase them throughout their dreams, literally doing everything he can to scare the shit out of them before finally going in for the kill. What also makes him frightening is he can straight up control reality and just use it against you. Take the dream Nancy had where she was in school, for example. Not only did Freddy use what was her name? Tina's body to coax her into coming with her, thinking, oh my god, making her think, oh my god, what if that's actually Tina and her soul's in trouble or some shit. So she goes to follow it, only to find that it's taking her to some kind of broiler room, just like the one Tina had seen in her dream. And that was scary in itself because even though Freddy wasn't around, you could still definitely feel his presence in that broiler. But that right there just shows how powerful he is, because he's able to control where you are and what happens in your dreams. And Freddy isn't just doing this for nothing. He's literally doing this because their parents were literally the ones that killed him back in the day. So that, in my personal opinion, makes it more frightening because that kind of just puts a target on their back. Well, we've had a corrupt shape-shifting demon, and a creepy dreamstalker. Who's gonna top these? Who's gonna top these two? Let's check in on the number 3 spot. At number 3, we got House from the R.L. Stein's The Haunting Hour episode, My Old House. Now, I don't want to say much about this villain since I do want to save my thoughts for when I review this episode. Yeah, Haunting Hour reviews, remember those? But anyway, I do want to do some like grand, kind of big for like a surprise when I make a comeback. But when I do, I do have something big planned for when I return to Haunting Hour reviews. Now, imagine someone that likes you so much that they not only want you to be all to themselves, but also do not want you to be around anyone else. Now, in this tale, a young girl develops a bond with, no exaggeration, her house. Not kidding. She literally becomes friends with her own house. But as crazy as that concept might sound, the way they execute it just makes it work because it's portrayed in a very serious and surprisingly sinister way. The domestic abuse themes applied to the episode also help to increase the horror. And as you may have guessed, the house is obsessed with Alice as well. And when Alice decides that it's time to move on with her life, the house does not like that, gets pissed, and well, I'm not going to say what the house does next because it's, well, it is the reason why it's on this list, because of how brutal the entire scene just seemed to be, with the screams and whatnot. I should probably stop talking right now, saying too much. But yeah, number 3 on my list is The House from R.L. Stein's The Haunting Hour. And now, the ones who have earned the silver and the gold on my list. Number 2 on my list is Crimson from Hell of a Boss. Now, a little backstory. I do have a little bit of Italian in my heritage, so it kind of does admittedly irritate me because when people try to glorify the mob life and whatnot, especially like young kids and whatnot, because a lot of my ancestors most likely had to flee Italy because of the mob takeover. And not only that, but also let's not forget that people literally get killed in this lifestyle. Now, keep in mind, not every mobster was corrupted by that lifestyle. Take Michael Francesi, for example. He was actually a mafia don at one point, but decided to put that life behind him after seeing the impact it was having on his life. So, he did a little soul searching, rediscovered himself, and got out of New York and started a family. And also, keep in mind, I'm not encouraging this lifestyle in any way, but I think it's fair to point out that, as Michael Francesi said, the streets of Brooklyn were literally safe for kids to run around on and whatnot, simply because the mob would keep the streets clean and like prevent anyone from coming in and causing any trouble. But regardless, this is not a good lifestyle to be growing up in at all. But that's what I like about this episode and this particular villain, because he isn't portraying the mob life in a glorious way. He's portraying it in a dark and very gritty and very disturbing way. I think Crimson is a perfect example of someone who was corrupted by the mafia life. Don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure Crimson would be a pretty fucked up demon even without the power he has and all that, but because he has all that power, he can pretty much just do whatever he wants, and I have never seen someone who is so hell-bent on getting their own way even if it meant hurting those that they are very close to. And the just shit he would put poor Moxie through for his entire life, and what he forced Moxie to endure and whatnot, will make you loathe him even more, and just make you sympathize with poor Moxie even more. Like, you probably never got to have a normal childhood. He probably had to be forced to do some of the most horrible things because of his sadistic father. And the scene involving Moxie's mother is just straight up heartbreaking, and definitely just shows Crimson at his most evil. Also, I think it's fair to point out that this line right here also gives me chills.
Oh, and Mox, if you ever talk back to me again, you and that pretty little thing you brought here are going home in boxes. Capiche?
Yes, sir.
Now, that line alone is scary because of two things. One, because of the subtlety. Crimson doesn't need to go into detail about what he'll do. He doesn't need to say I'm going to rip out your internal organs and strangle you with them and shit, and I'm going to rip out your guts with my teeth. No, he literally implies that if you don't do what I say, you will fucking die. And that right there is horrifying because well, he means it. This is someone who is so sociopathic that he's willing to literally axe people off that are like related to him just to get his own way. And also, picture yourself as someone that he's after, and you're inside his house. You can't go out the door because he has those metal shutters that come down, and you can't try to fight him because he has a bunch of people working under him that will try to defend him. So pretty much, if he sees you as a target, you're screwed. And that's scary in a sense because that your entire instinct of fight or flight is being taken away from you. Now, there may or may not be aspects to Crimson that I personally like, but regardless of any of that, that only makes him much scarier, because those likable qualities can easily be used to deceive somebody and make them think that nothing, that give them a false sense of security. Like when he first met the IMP group, he was, very charming and friendly at first, and even made a few gags here and there. But then the facade slowly started to fade, and you saw the true sadist he actually truly was. And all this generosity was most likely so that no one would suspect he had anything else planned. I unfortunately have to keep it down talk a little quieter, because one of our annoying as fuck, wrinkly old Karen neighbors came to complain about my noise level. Yeah, apparently I was talking too loud or some shit. And it was weird as fuck too, like they weren't even from this neighborhood. Like, get your short stumpy ass out of here, bitch. But yeah, due to his very sadistic and overall sociopathic personality, it has earned Crimson the number 2 spot on my list. Also, let's never forget what he did to Chaz, alright? Let's never forget that. And also the fact that you never ever see what happens to Chaz, and it just cuts to him, it's just, it tempers into that fear of the unknown, because your mind just fills in the blanks as to what happened to him. Was his death quick? Was he tortured a little bit? What the fuck did Crimson do to him? What's even more sad is Moxie and his mother were just so close to each other, and Crimson knew this and knew how much joy she brought him, and just took that all away from him. And now we've reached our number 1 spot. Now, before I do that, I'm going to go into some honorable mentions. Some honorable mentions. Gage from Pet Sematary. I wouldn't really consider him a villain only because he doesn't start out that way, and it's not him that's like doing all of that. It's actually a very evil spirit that got inside of his body and is now controlling it. So I wouldn't outright call him a villain. Actually, I'd call the spirit haunting the Micmac burial ground, or that, not the Micmac burial. Is that what it's called? I forget what it's called. Fuck, I need to read that book again. But yeah, that's pretty much why I wouldn't have him on the list. And also, I have Pennywise, which I'm conflicted as to whether I should put him or Mr. Chuckleteeth. But due to the like how just the fact that Mr. Chuckleteeth seems to attack on a more emotional level is what, made him more scarier to me. Just a little more scarier to me. Now, don't get me wrong, Pennywise is a very menacing and scary and straight up evil villain, but what makes Mr. Chuckleteeth just a little scarier is the just how tragic everything surrounding him truly is. And there also seemed to be more of an emotional emphasis on this episode's tone as well. Like, at least with it, you get some lighthearted moments with the kids, but this episode is just straight up dark and gloomy all throughout. I was also going to add Big L to this list, and it was kind of a toss up for me between him and the house, but I ultimately found the house to be a little scarier simply because of its weird ass perversion it has toward a preteen girl and how far it's willing to go to keep her, to make sure she doesn't like leave it again. Big Yellow, aside from the ending, which is fucking jarring, is not too intimidating of a villain. I mean, don't get me wrong, someone does go missing because of him in the middle of the episode, the wolf mascot. But that like strikes up more curiosity about him because there's not really any explanation as to what happens to him until the end. But aside from the ending, Big Yellow doesn't really do anything too scary. He leans more into the eerie category. I was also going to add the Cenobites, but as intimidating as they are more scary on them, like, bloodshed, gore level, as opposed to like a psychological. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some psychological aspects to Hellraiser, but the thing is, the Cenobites, they're more about like, physical torture as opposed to psychological and emotional torture like the villains I just mentioned. And I honestly don't think they're the scariest part of Hellraiser. They're pretty damn frightening, but like the scariest part of Hellraiser, in my opinion, is the unnerving atmosphere and like overall tone and like themes applied. And now, my number one pick, silent drumroll please, John Doe from Seven. Now, in this movie, Detective Somerset and Mills are searching for a methodical serial killer who seems to be able to avoid police detection. That serial killer being John Doe. Now, here's a character that where you don't really see him until for like 50% of the film, which ultimately helps to build up his eventual reveal because it, kind of has that famous like Jaws effect that, you get a chance to see just what he's capable of until you finally see just who's doing it. Like before you even see him, the film gives a chance to like build up John Doe as a villain and show you just how like twisted he can truly get. And he's also a very scary villain because his kills are just very graphic in an extremely scary way. Like you could tell, like just from the way he leaves his victims behind, that they truly did suffer. Like the soft victim, for example, like they were literally just forced to be tied to the bed and like just lay there as they slowly wasted away while they were like just starved to death John Doe would like come in and inject them with like nutrients to keep them alive, but they never truly got to eat, so of course they slowly withered away because of it. And you could see like they found like pictures of the person like slowly rotting away, and you could just see like straight up agony on his face. It truly is like very uncomfortable to think about. Another one was literally forced to eat until their stomach ruptured and literally exploded. He's also very cunning and very smart, which makes him an even bigger threat because the thing is, even with the police after him, he's always one step ahead of him and even seems to want them to chase after him. But what ultimately makes him the scariest villain out of all the villains on this list is that what he thinks he's doing is right. He thinks that he's doing a good thing by cleansing the world of sin, by murdering anyone who exercises any of these sinful acts. And it's also scary because he's not doing it coming from a sadistic place. Like, he's not doing it because he is getting any enjoyment out of it. He literally feels like he has to do this. Like, this is all, according to him, a way to send a message and set an example. What also makes him the scariest for me is that someone like John Doe could easily exist, and it could be like someone you least suspected. Like John Doe, he didn't like there wasn't really anything about him that seemed too off. He seemed like a very shy, very kind of polite gentleman, aside from the scene when he first enters the station. But that's another thing that makes him scary, is that because he doesn't really look like, the first thing that comes to mind when people think of killers. He looks like an average hardworking man. Like, you just looking at him, we wouldn't guess that he is involved with anything, like that. But yeah, John Doe is the most horrifying villain for me because of how strategic he is with all of his murders and whatnot, but also just of his overall morality and how he believes that he's doing the right thing. But yeah, that was my top 5 scariest villains list. I hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to like and sub for more content.